Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, episode 66. I'm Enigmius, and this is the episode before the episode where we do something interesting. Actually, it's not that bad, but things aren't working as we had kind of hoped that they would. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about why, and then we're going to talk about the very near future, what we're going to be doing. We have the whole setup here, our whole mining setup going. A little bit of testing, a little bit more field testing to make sure things worked the way that we intended them to, and also gathering as much ice as we can to convert to hydrogen for fuel to get the Atlas off this rock and out of the atmosphere of the Earth-like planet. And I noticed as I was wandering around doing various different things that the drill ship had a tendency to get stuck on this side. And I would just kind of sit here doing seemingly nothing. When you're looking at it from a distance, it didn't seem to make sense. Why? It wasn't engaging with the connectors. It wasn't turning around and going the other way. I would just kind of sit here. So I decided to come over and take a closer look. And if you look at the connectors now, what's going on is pretty much indicative of the entire problem. Specifically, they aren't lining up. The lower connector here isn't getting far enough forward to line up with the connector above it, nor is the whole drill ship getting far enough forward to trigger the sensors to indicate that it's time to start engaging the timer blocks that will manage the transfer from materials out of the drill ship's inventory and also get everything set up to start going the other way. Now, at the time I first noticed this problem, it wasn't even making it this far forward. It was about a half block behind, so that it looked like there was something preventing the connectors from starting to overlap with one another, the rings. It's the way that it was positioned, it made it look like it was the connectors themselves that were having some sort of difficulty. And the sensor just finally tripped. I was not going to be able to make the connection, but I'm not joking when I say it's been sitting here for 45 minutes trying to make that happen. It finally tripped the sensor, so it wasn't able to make the connection, but it is going to start going the other way. And that, by itself, is a victory. You have no idea. It's just so funny that it finally did that while I was recording. And lucky, I guess you could say, because we were discussing it. Long story short, that's not ideal. That's not a very good setup. Now, one of the things you may have noticed, if you've been following this series, if you've been looking at what we've been doing with the layout of the track ship and the drill ship, is that the position of the connectors has changed. They used to be, this connector was forward-facing and it was down here. And it was, I think, recessed one block relative to where it is now. Now it's facing upward. And this connector here used to actually be on some conveyor tubes that came down, and then it was right here so that it would line up properly with the connector that was right there. I realized as I was kind of watching things and making sure that they were lining up and everything that was working before we started running into problems, that the way it was lined up, the drills weren't coming far enough to either end to clear out enough materials so that when things started to go below the surface with the track ship, that the track ship would be able to fit. The hole wasn't going to be big enough, so we had to make some changes so that the hole would be big enough for the track ship. Very simple, straightforward. The changes are very simple. The setup itself, how everything works and how everything interacts, very, very easy to change the parameters in terms of how far forward and back the drill ship goes. So that's what we did. But then, as it was doing its thing, drilling around, doing its stuff, it started encountering that problem. So the problem-solving thing in my head said, well, you just changed this thing, and it didn't seem like a big deal what you changed, but you did change something, and ever since you changed it, it hasn't been working, so it was obviously you broke something. So I don't want this to sound like I was making some big excuse for, my own ineptitude by blaming it on the game. But what I found after I changed, I ground things off, I moved things around, I did everything I could think of. What ended up happening is I said, okay, well, I'm going to come down here manually and drill out around the drills and see if there's not something that the drills are getting hung up on, and that's why it doesn't want to move. And you can see this area here is obviously a fair bit deeper than the area leading up to it, and this is all the manual drilling that I did down here into the nickel, all this area here, and then over and then around the edges. That was all me with my drill, just in clearing mode going on. It didn't take long. It's a fully upgraded drill. It's pretty snappy for doing things like this. And then after I had made all of these changes, I came up top, and it was getting an extra half block. It was moving a half block forward. And that's where I realized, hey, this thing is getting caught up on Renegade ghost voxels. Voxels that you can't see. Chunks of ground that the game says exist, but it's not, for whatever reason, rendering those pieces so that our eyes can see them. Makes it kind of difficult to track down the culprits and get them out of the way. And that's basically the problem. Now, you might be saying to yourself, yeah, right, BS, well, take a look at this footage that I had from before I started recording and see the puffs of smoke around the drills. And then you come over here and you just look at how much space is around all of these drills. Even the areas that I didn't clear underneath the drills. You can see it's barely right now clipping the tops of some of the ice as it goes along. And then along here, this side it's a little bit close, right? But it's still, there's a gap there. There's nothing there that our eyes would suggest would be, preventing the drills from moving. And then you look at the area where I cleared out that gives it even more room, and you realize that there's nothing that would qualify as a visible obstruction that's preventing the drills from moving in the direction that they're trying to go. So, I don't know. One of the things that I noticed also previously, and this was another bizarre bug, is that we had, and it was on this end as well. This would move far enough back to connect with this guy. They would be connected. They would be locked. The rings on both would be green. And then as part of the procedure, after it's had up to 5 seconds to transfer the contents of the drill ship off onto the track ship and up into the Atlas, the power for this connector is turned off, and that's what releases it, and then it starts going the other way. Well, when the power would turn off, you would see it go off for a split second, and then it would turn on and lock again immediately. And the only way that I was able to fix that, and it makes absolutely no sense that it would fix it, is I raised the chassis of the Atlas just a tiny bit on the pistons, and then it stopped having that problem. So it's a bunch of weirdness going on, and I think a big part of it, to be completely honest, is that we've had this set up and running for quite some time in this space, and there's been a certain amount of drift. The position of the landing gear on the ground, it's not in the same spot that it was, and if you actually look at the pistons themselves, you'll see they're on a bit of a slant. This would be kind of straight down, and by the time we get to the bottom, we're not even in the same spot. So there's a certain amount of drift there because of the pistons being on a slant. There's probably a little bit of a drift when you load into the game. Sometimes things aren't always set up properly. It takes a little while for them to get set up, and in the meantime things can move. It happens. It's not that big of a deal, but I think we've been in this spot for so long, actually moving so little as we're doing all of this testing and tweaking and all that other stuff, that it would be better realistically for us to start over in a new hole and evaluate it from there. So what that means is that in terms of the blueprints, I'm going to put it off a little bit because it's a very complicated setup in the sense that there's a lot of moving parts, and if someone is going to actually set this up and try and get any use out of it, they need to know what those moving parts require of them, so that they can not only get it up and running, but also if they're having occasional difficulties, be able to diagnose it and fix it themselves. People who just want to spawn it in and goof around for a while, they don't have to be so concerned with it. But the people who genuinely want to try and use it, I don't want to give them something that I know is inconsistent until I've had a chance to work out those inconsistencies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain a save with everything exactly where it is, so that I can hop in and take a look and make adjustments and tweak things in an atmosphere environment on an ice lake, mining, and then we're going to have another save with the Atlas off to Mars. So that's what we're going to do. I think that's the best way to do this. I can't keep the trip to Mars on hold any longer. It's been long enough. The only reason why we aren't going to Mars at the end of this episode is because we don't have quite enough fuel stored up, and the reason why we don't is because we had the difficulties with the drill ship getting stuck in one spot. But I think that's how we're going to do it. And then once I'm satisfied that everything is working consistently enough to offer the blueprints alongside with a video describing in a little more detail how things are working and how they're set up, then that's what we'll do. It's just trying to be fair to the people who would download these blueprints and try and get some use out of the ship. So that's the plan. I would expect that the next episode will be off to Mars in the Atlas. And that's the plan. The only thing that's going to stop us from doing that is a catastrophic failure of some sort that prevents us from finding any more ice. That joke is never going to get old to me. It's just one of those things. Look at the Dauntless. Look at what's left of the Dauntless. I've been busy, like I say. The whole idea is to just give this thing time to do its thing, and while it's doing its thing, I'm off doing other things. And one of the other things that I've been doing is dismantling the Dauntless, and we're basically in the final stages of recovering all the bits and pieces that went into making the Dauntless. We've got some interesting bits up top, the yellow stuff that we like to recover, and then the rest is basically steel plates in the form of light armor blocks. We've got our little construction ship parked in there waiting to recover those bits. And then everything else we're going to leave, because this is how we're going to get the blueprint set up. It's very, very convenient to have something like this set up so that we can mirror any changes that are happening on the working version over here and then be able to make a blueprint instantly. It's very, very simple and straightforward. Same with this guy here. This guy is basically the mirror of the tab that's right there, only it's much smaller. It doesn't have these elongated bits, so that once you've got a track ship built from the projectors hanging from the gantry, you can switch the projection or the blueprint in the projector to this one here, minus all the frame blocks on the sides, and it's just fewer blocks in the projection, also only projecting the blocks that are necessary to grind off and re-weld to reconstruct the tab after you lower the whole thing. And then we'll have to make a blueprint of the drill ship once it's all tweaked and adjusted to work the way that it's supposed to work every time. And that'll be it. We're going to take the Spectre Omni with us. I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get it to land on the back of the Atlas, even if only barely. I think the back deck is going to be large enough. And then we're going to be off and running. We're not going to be bringing any track ships or drill ships with us. Those are going to be ground down on the save version where we're just going to Mars. We're going to recover the components and then head off with just the boom and the gantry on either side. And then if we do end up taking it down onto the planet on Mars, we'll have the blueprints that we can reconstruct everything else. So we were running a little bit over in terms of how long before I gave you guys another video showing you what we were doing, what was going on, because up until this point, I wasn't even sure we were going to get anything going on because of this whole scenario with the drill ship. And now I'm feeling pretty good about things. We're going to finish getting the rest of the ice that we need to get the job done. In the next episode, we're going to be off to Mars. We're going to finish welding up the jump drives inside. We're going to see how those work for us. We're going to get out of the atmosphere, and we're going to be headed in that general direction. First star on the right. So if you want to be notified when I add that video, you can always subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media in the information box below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.